I still remember the sound the lock made. Not the heavy slam of the attic door, that came first, but the lock, the way it clicked from the outside. Soft, final, almost polite, like it didn't want to draw attention to itself while it changed everything about my life. At first I thought maybe he was just being cautious. Maybe the grandkids were playing downstairs. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe. That word always gets old men like me in trouble. The air smelled like dust and cedar, the kind of scent you never notice until you're alone with it. I stood there holding a box of old photo albums and spare blankets, staring at the little brass padlock that had never been used before, the kind I bought years ago and forgot about. He remembered, though. He knew where I kept it. He planned this. I took 2 steps toward the door, then stopped. Not because I was scared, not because I couldn't yell, but because my hands were already in my pockets and I could feel the keys jangling. My keys. The keys to every room in the house. I could have shouted, could have banged, could have forced it all open, but something told me not to. It wasn't the lock that hurt. It was the silence that followed, the fact that he didn't say a word, didn't even lie about it. That silence, that was the truth screaming through the wood. My name is Earl Watterson. I'm 76 years old, and I live, well, used to live, in a small town in Illinois. I worked 37 years as a metal worker, sheet metal mostly, built vents, panels, ducts, things people never see unless they stop working. Just like old men. You don't notice us until we make a noise. I raised my son Caleb in that house, paid every inch of it off before he turned 20. It's the kind of house that still has storm windows and wallpaper peeling at the corners. Margaret, my wife, God rest her soul, she picked out every shade of paint in that place, even the attic. Said it made it feel warmer in the winter. I never thought I'd be left here, not like this. You'd think the worst part would be the insult. The idea that I was some burden, some piece of old furniture shoved into the attic so the living could breathe easier. But no. The worst part was realizing how quietly it happened. No argument, no fight. Just a request. Dad, can you help me move something upstairs? And then the door. I stood there for hours, I think. Long enough for the light through the vent to shift across the wall. Long enough for the creak in my knees to start winning. I didn't cry. Not yet. Old men like me, we don't cry easily. We sit. We think. We count our breath. And as I leaned back against the wall, the metal of the key ring pressing into my palm, one thought kept repeating itself in my mind, soft but stubborn, like a whisper refusing to die. If he wanted to lock me away, why did I still have the keys? I wasn't always an attic man. There was a time when my hands weren't as shaky, when the skin on my forearms wasn't as thin as paper, when the neighborhood kids used to call me Mr. Fix-It and ask if I could patch their bike tires. I was the man who lit the furnace before the first frost, who made sure the gutters didn't clog, who drove the church van when nobody else volunteered. I wasn't loud, but I showed up. I built the house on Maple Street with overtime money and calloused palms. Margaret chose the floor plan from a magazine. I remember how her eyes lit up at the idea of a sunroom, said she wanted morning light to kiss the plants. That was the first thing I built, even before the kitchen. The plants are probably dead now. Nobody waters things they didn't plant. My son, Caleb, was born in that house. Took his first steps across the living room floor I installed. fell asleep on my chest while the rain tapped the tin roof I nailed down myself. I taught him how to patch drywall, how to read a spirit level, how to sand wood with the grain. He used to call me his walking toolbox. I thought that meant something. But time doesn't always pass with respect. Sometimes it slips by while you're fixing everybody else's problems. And one day you wake up and you're not needed anymore, just tolerated. When Margaret passed, the house got quieter. Caleb was already grown, married to Dana, and they moved back in just for a while to save money. That while turned into years. I didn't mind. I liked having noise again, liked hearing footsteps upstairs and the coffee machine running before I even opened my eyes. Thought it meant I still mattered. I didn't see the signs. Didn't notice how Caleb's tone changed when I asked about the bills. How he stopped calling me Dad and started saying Earl like I was a tenant. I chalked it up to stress. Work, life. The way people get cold without meaning to. But a few weeks before the attic, I remember something strange. I came home from the pharmacy, and the front door was locked. Not just the knob, the deadbolt, too. Caleb opened it after a minute, surprised. Said it must have locked itself. I laughed. We both laughed. But now that laugh feels like a lie I swallowed without chewing. Back then, I let it go. I trusted that kind of forgetting. Thought a house could forgive small things the way a father does. Now I'm starting to wonder if forgetting is how it all begins. Until one day, you're upstairs, holding keys that don't fit any doors anymore. It's not always one moment that tells you you're not wanted anymore. Sometimes it's the way your cup isn't on the table when breakfast is served, the way the room goes quiet when you walk in, how nobody asks if you need anything when they go to the store. Those things pile up like snow, light at first until your roof starts creaking. For a while I kept making excuses for Caleb. Told myself he was tired, that Dana was pressuring him, that the grandkids' noise had fried his nerves. I let myself believe that things change meant we'll be fine. But what I didn't understand, what I refused to understand, is that love doesn't vanish in storms. It vanishes in silence. There was one night, maybe 3 months before the attic, when I walked into the living room and heard my name. Not Dad, not Pops, just Earl. Dana was saying, "You have to talk to Earl. He can't keep using the washer like it's his." Caleb didn't say anything at first. Then he sighed and said, "It's just easier to let him do his thing. He'll be gone eventually." They didn't see me. I backed out before my presence betrayed me. That night I folded my laundry in silence. Folded it slow. Folded it neat. Just like Margaret used to. Even after that I didn't speak up. I convinced myself I misheard, misunderstood. You don't want to believe your own blood sees you as a chore, but it kept adding up. The thermostat was locked one morning. I went to turn the heat down. It was one of those early spring days that surprised you with warmth, and the screen blinked, "Admin access only." I asked Caleb about it. He said, "Oh, I guess I forgot to give you the code." Forgot. Then came the day with the envelope. Just a plain white thing on the kitchen counter. Caleb said it was some refinance paperwork I needed to sign for insurance. I flipped through and saw words like occupancy, transfer, limited interest. It didn't smell right. I didn't sign. He waved it off, said it wasn't important, said he'd take care of it. I watched his eyes when he said that. They didn't blink. That night I pulled out my old lockbox from the coat closet, the one with my military ID, Margaret's letters, the deed to the house. Still had my name on it. I held that paper in my lap and stared at it for a long time. Sometimes the deepest betrayals don't come from what people do to you. They come from realizing how long they've been planning to do it. I never thought I'd feel afraid in my own kitchen, but that's exactly what I felt the morning I found the papers. Not the kind of fear that makes you scream or run, but the kind that makes your knees weak before your brain can catch up. The kind that makes the whole house feel like it's watching you. It started with the coffee pot. I was reaching into the cabinet above it for filters when a manila folder slipped off the top shelf and landed hard on the counter. It wasn't labeled. No sticky note. No name. Just weight. I opened it because I thought it might be Caleb's work stuff. But the first page said, "Petition for temporary guardianship, due to diminished mental capacity." My name was on the line below. Not in pencil, not in theory, in ink. At first I thought, this must be a mistake. Maybe it's an old form, a misprint, a draft of something that never happened. But page after page the story got clearer. Evaluations I never knew about, statements I never gave, claims that I was increasingly forgetful and at risk of mismanaging household utilities. It read like someone describing a man I didn't recognize, or maybe didn't want to recognize. My hands were shaking so bad I had to sit. The kitchen chair creaked under me, like it didn't want to hold the weight either. A few days earlier, my neighbor Gary had mentioned something weird. Said he saw a locksmith van in the driveway while I was out at the clinic. Thought maybe Dana had locked herself out. I shrugged it off, laughed even. But now, it sat in my chest like a rock. That lock on the thermostat, the envelope on the counter. The sudden deadbolt that day. I came back from Walgreens. It wasn't just happening. It was being built, piece by piece, quietly, deliberately. I put the folder back exactly where I found it, pressed it flat, closed the cabinet, didn't say a word. That night I stayed up tracing the edges of the house with my steps, touching doorknobs, testing windows, counting how many of them now stuck or jammed or weren't working anymore. Caleb asked why I was still awake at midnight. I told him I couldn't sleep. Told him I missed the sound of the furnace kicking on. He said, "You'll get used to it." I don't know what hurt more, that he said it, or that he believed I would. That was the night I started keeping my keys in my pocket, even when I slept, especially when I slept. He asked so gently, I almost said yes without thinking. "Dad, could you help me move some old blankets up to the attic? Dana's on my back again about cleaning, just for a minute." I nodded, like I always did. The word yes comes easy when you've spent your life trying not to be in the way. He handed me a cardboard box, light but awkward, the kind of box you only use once. His hands didn't shake. Mine did. The climb was slow. I've walked those attic stairs 1,000 times. When Margaret was alive, it was where we stored Christmas lights and baby clothes we couldn't give away. I used to joke that one day I'd move up there to escape the noise. Guess I wasn't far off. The attic smelled like old cedar and insulation. Dry, faintly sour. Light pushed through the small window in slanted lines, catching the dust as it rose behind me. I set the box down beside an old steamer trunk and turned to ask him where he wanted it. But he wasn't behind me. I stepped toward the stairs, and that's when I heard it. The door. Quiet, firm, and then the click. It was such a soft sound, not cruel, not loud, almost like closing a drawer. I waited. "Caleb?" I said, voice light. Not accusing, just curious. No answer. I reached for the knob, turned it, locked. Still. I waited. I told myself he'd be right back. Maybe the grandkids needed him. Maybe Dana called. Maybe. But minutes stretched into more, and the silence began to shift. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was hollow, intentional. I didn't panic. Not yet. That's the part I still don't understand. I didn't yell, didn't bang on the door. I just stood there, hand resting on the knob, listening for footsteps that never came. The air felt thinner up there. Or maybe it was just the weight in my chest. Eventually I sat down. The floor creaked beneath me like it was trying to speak in my place. I leaned against the wall and slipped my hand into my pocket. The keys were still there. Cool. Familiar. Ordinary. I closed my fingers around them like they were a prayer. He hadn't taken them. He'd locked me in. But he hadn't taken the keys. And that's what I kept asking myself over and over in the silence that followed. If he meant for me to disappear, why did he let me keep the way out? I don't know how long I sat there before I noticed the nail in the wall, just a little bent thing, rusted over, sticking out above the window frame. But in the quiet, it became the most important thing in the world, because it caught the light. And the light was moving, slow, predictable, like a sundial built by neglect. It gave me something to follow. The attic isn't large. One room, pitched roof, a single small window and wood beams thick with dust, a few cardboard boxes, a trunk, an old suitcase that still had Margaret's tag on it from that trip we never took. It was supposed to be our anniversary. But her cancer had other plans. I leaned against the wall and listened to the house below. Nothing, not even footsteps. You'd be surprised how loud silence gets when you're waiting to hear your own name. My knees ached. The floor was too hard. But I didn't lie down. Something in me refused to make this place comfortable. Instead, I started counting. I counted the floorboards between me and the window. 13. I counted how many times I heard the wind tap the vent. 5. I counted the breaths between each memory that tried to break through. There's something about being alone that strips you bare. Every word you've ever regretted saying comes back with perfect clarity. So do the ones you never said. Like, "I'm tired," or "that hurt," or "I don't deserve this." Men like me, we were raised on silence, taught that love is providing, that respect is earned, not demanded, that if you keep your head down, your hands busy, and your voice low, you'll be safe. But here I was, sitting in a room I helped insulate, watching light crawl across a nail I'd probably hammered in myself. And I wasn't safe. I was forgotten. No. Worse. I was removed. After a while I stood, walked to the window. The latch stuck, but I jiggled it loose. The fresh air rolled in, cooler than I expected. Then something caught my nose. A smell. Faint. Sweet. Out of place. Not dust. Not wood. Something sharper. I sniffed again. My throat tightened. It smelled like something burning. I turned toward the door. And for the first time since he locked me in, I felt fear crawl up the back of my neck. It wasn't my imagination. The smell was real. Sharp, almost sweet, like sugar left too long on a burner. I moved to the door and crouched low. That's when I saw it. Thin gray lines sneaking in through the bottom seam, curling like fingers. Smoke. Not much, not fast, but enough. I pressed my palm flat to the wood. Warm, then hotter. Panic didn't hit me like a hammer. It slid in slowly, like the smoke itself. My chest tightened. My mouth went dry. For a second, I just stood there. This house, my house, was built solid. Fire-resistant siding, double-paned windows. But I knew what old insulation smelled like when it caught. I'd seen it once, years ago at a neighbor's place. By the time you smell it upstairs, the real trouble is already below. I grabbed the window latch, pulled, it stuck. I slammed my palm against the frame. Once, twice. The window cracked open just wide enough to let in a rush of cool air. I stuck my head out. The yard below looked the same, quiet. No flames, no sirens, no shouts. But I could hear something now. Faint. From downstairs. A cough. A child. Then, nothing. I looked around the attic. Not much to work with. An old extension cord, a rusted trunk, a rolled-up carpet. Useless. No, not useless, just forgotten. I pulled the extension cord free and began tying it to the trunk handle. Not for escape, not yet, but just to do something. My hands moved fast. Muscle memory. Purpose is a powerful thing. Then, the sound that froze me. Footsteps on the stairs. Not fast, not loud, hesitant. Then a voice. "Dad?" It was Caleb. He knocked once, then again. "Dad, are you in there?" I didn't answer. I heard the rattle of the doorknob. Locked. Then came the panic. Not mine. His. "Dad, please, open the door. The kitchen. There was a fire. We need to get out. I need the keys. Dad, please." His voice cracked on that last word. I closed my hand around the key ring in my pocket. The metal warm now, just like the door, and for the first time since he shut me in, I didn't feel powerless. I felt something else. Not anger, not revenge, clarity. And I waited. Just long enough for him to know what it feels like to be the one on the other side of the door. "Dad, please. The fire's spreading. I need the keys." His voice wasn't calm anymore. It cracked between syllables. Each knock on the door got more frantic, like he was trying to shake guilt out of the hinges. But I just stood there. Not because I wanted to hurt him, because I needed him to feel what I had felt. "Dad, come on. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean for this. It got out of hand. Just open the damn door." I sat down. The key ring was still in my pocket. I pulled it out. 5 keys. 1 to the attic, 1 to the front door. The rest to things that didn't matter anymore. I held them in my palm and stared. They looked so small, so ordinary. I used to think being a father meant never letting your kids suffer, never letting them fall. But maybe that's what made this happen. All the times I said yes when I should have said no. All the times I made myself small so Caleb could feel big. I could hear Dana now, yelling from downstairs. One of the grandkids crying. Something thudded against a wall. I thought about Margaret. She would have told me to do the right thing. She always saw the good in people, especially in Caleb. But she wasn't here. And he wasn't that little boy anymore. He was a man now, a man who locked his father in an attic. I stood up, walked slowly to the door. "Are you there?" Caleb's voice was hoarse now. "Dad, please, just give me the keys." I said nothing for a moment. Then, "Which father are you asking for, Caleb?" Silence. I continued, quieter. "The one who paid your tuition? Who stayed up fixing your car in the snow? Who let you move back in when your marriage got rocky? Or the one you locked away without a word?" More silence. I waited. Finally, "I don't know." I took one key, slid it under the door. Not the attic key, the shed key. He rattled it, tried it, swore. "Dad, this isn't it." I leaned close to the door and whispered, not with anger, but with something heavier. "Then keep guessing." And I stepped back. I still had the key he needed. But before I gave him a way out, I needed him to understand what it meant to put someone in a place without light, without voice, without choice. Because only when you've felt the lock from both sides do you truly understand what a key is worth. The smoke was thicker now. I could taste it, bitter, oily, clinging to the back of my throat. I pressed my shirt over my nose and took slow, shallow breaths. Years working around metal taught me how to breathe through heat, but not through betrayal. Caleb was still at the door, knocking softer now, less rage, more fear. "Dad, I'm sorry. Please, we have to get out. I don't know what to do." I stood just beyond the door, calm. "You'll call 911, I said. "I will. Just give me the key." "No," I replied. "You'll call now. On speaker. I want to hear it." There was a pause. Then the sound of a phone unlocking. A beep, a ring. Then his voice, shaky, fast, frantic, finally real. "Yes. Fire. Kitchen. 117 Maple. Please, yes, my father's trapped upstairs." The operator's voice crackled back. He followed instructions. I waited. When the call ended, I spoke again. "You're going to cancel the guardianship forms. Tear them up. Say it out loud." "Dad, say it. I'll cancel them, I swear. You'll tell your children the truth, that their grandfather isn't sick, isn't weak, that I built this house, that I kept it standing, that I deserve respect." More silence. Then, "I will. You'll never lock another door in this house unless I ask you to." "Yes." I slid the key under the door. The right one. I heard it scrape against the floor. He picked it up with shaking hands. The lock turned, the door creaked open, smoke spilling in like shame. He stood there, eyes red, face streaked with ash and sweat. I didn't look at him long. I moved past him. Slow, steady, my lungs burning now, my knees screaming. But my back was straight. Donna stood at the bottom of the stairs holding Sophie, the little one, her face buried in her mother's chest. I paused just long enough to brush her hair back from her forehead, and then I stepped outside. The air hit like a slap, clean, cold, alive. Sirens wailed in the distance. Caleb stood behind me. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Because there are moments in a man's life when words don't fix things. Only fire does. The walk down the stairs felt longer than the climb up. The heat pressed from below like a warning. I could see the flicker of orange light dancing on the walls, smoke curling along the ceiling like it was trying to write something none of us wanted to read. I didn't run. I couldn't. But I moved with purpose. Caleb followed behind, silent. I didn't look back. The kitchen was blackened. Flames had been put out, but the damage was there. Melted plastic, scorched cabinets, the scent of ruin hanging in the air. A firefighter nodded at me as I passed. His eyes lingered a moment too long, like he knew. Maybe he did. The paramedics insisted I go to the hospital. I didn't argue. My lungs were tight and the corners of my vision had started to dim. They gave me oxygen, asked me questions, took my vitals. One nurse, young, kind eyes, said, "You're lucky someone got to you." I said, "I had the key the whole time." She didn't know what I meant, but I did. Back home, the house was quiet. Not the kind of silence that used to sting, but a different kind. One that came with lowered eyes and paused footsteps. Caleb tried to speak at dinner. I lifted my hand, gently. He stopped. Donna said nothing. The children watched cartoons in the living room, their laughter small and sweet like birds after a storm. That night, I walked the house alone, checked the doors, the windows, the fuse box, everything that had once belonged to me but was slowly taken back. I ran my hand over the frame of the attic door. It had been left open now, unlocked. The brass padlock sat on the floor beside it, broken. I picked it up, not to keep, to remind. I walked back to my bedroom, where I still kept Margaret's shawl draped over the rocking chair, sat down, placed the broken lock on the nightstand beside me. I didn't cry, but I did breathe easier. Because sometimes reclaiming your place in a home doesn't come with yelling or slamming fists. Sometimes it comes with showing them that silence doesn't mean weakness, and kindness doesn't mean permission. That night, before I closed my eyes, I didn't lock my door, but I did keep the key on the table beside me, right where they could see it in the morning. I cut the hospital bracelet off with a pair of kitchen shears and dropped it in the trash without a second thought. Then I made myself a cup of black coffee, no cream, no sugar, and sat down at the table with a yellow legal pad and a ballpoint pen. The sun wasn't even up yet. I've always been an early riser. The house was still quiet. Caleb was in the basement now. Dana had moved the kids into her sister's for a few days. Until things settle. I didn't ask questions. I didn't offer comfort. That morning I wasn't anyone's burden. I was a man on a mission. I pulled out my old lockbox, same one I'd kept tucked behind the coats for years. Inside, my discharge papers, the deed to the house, a folder marked "Emergencies Only." I smiled. Guess the label finally applied. I called Henry. Henry McAllister, retired cop. Knew more about small-town politics than anyone should. We used to fix lawnmowers together in the summers. He picked up on the first ring. "Earl?" I need to freeze a few things." He didn't ask why. By 10 a.m., we'd contacted the bank, pulled power of attorney, alerted the credit union, changed passwords. Not out of paranoia, out of self-respect. Henry brought over a notary kit and a sandwich, turkey and Swiss. No tomato, just how I like it. We worked in silence, like two men who had nothing left to prove. Every form I signed felt like a brick placed back into the foundation of a house that had been slowly dismantled behind my back. Around noon, my phone buzzed. "Caleb, can we talk?" I didn't mean for it to go that far. Then another. "Caleb." "I'll fix it, Dad. Please. I'll do whatever you need." I turned the phone face down, because doing whatever I need isn't the same as doing what's right. You don't earn trust back with convenience. You build it, one nail at a time. I finished updating my will that afternoon, removed Caleb as executor, left the house to Sophie and Micah with a clause. They inherit only after age 25, and only if they've spoken to me at least once a month for 2 years straight. No shortcuts, no intermediaries. That evening, I sat back in the rocker. Stared at the sunset out the window I'd cleaned myself. I didn't feel bitter. I felt prepared, because after a lifetime of giving things away, I'd finally remembered how to hold on. We sat in the living room like strangers. Dana on one side of the couch, arms folded. The kids on the carpet, quiet for once. Caleb across from me, hands locked together so tightly his knuckles were white. I didn't sit in my usual chair. I stood. I held a folded sheet of paper in one hand and my phone in the other. Nobody spoke. The fire had been 3 days ago. The house still smelled like burnt plastic and vinegar. But we were all here, finally, together. "I want to start by playing something," I said. I tapped my phone. A recording played. Caleb's voice, nervous, rushed, desperate. "Dad, please, open the door. The kitchen. There was a fire. We need to get out. I need the keys. Dad, please." I paused it. Let the silence settle. Then I opened the paper in my hand, read, line by line, the phrases I'd found in that attic folder. Subject exhibits signs of confusion, misplaced items, repetitive speech. I looked up. "Anyone here think I'm confused now?" No one answered. "Anyone want to tell me this was a misunderstanding?" Still nothing. Sophie reached for Dana's hand. Dana wouldn't meet my eyes. Then I said the one word no one in the room wanted to hear. "Lawyer." That got their attention. "If anything like this happens again, if I'm locked in, lied to, cut off, manipulated, I won't call a family meeting. I'll call my attorney." I let it hang. "I'm not doing this because I'm angry," I continued. "I'm doing this because I've been patient long enough." I turned to Caleb. "You'll go to counseling. With me. You'll write a letter. On paper, in ink, apologizing for what you did and explaining it to your children when they're old enough to understand." He swallowed. "You'll return the house keys. And when I say something matters, you'll listen, not nod, not placate. Listen." The room was still. Micah leaned against the couch, thumb in his mouth. Dana opened her mouth, closed it again. Then Caleb shifted forward. His mouth opened too. But no words came out. I nodded slowly. "Good," I said. "That's the first honest thing you've done in a long time." And then I sat down in the chair Margaret used to call mine. And for the first time in years, it felt like it was mine again. The report came in a plain envelope. No drama. Just facts. The fire started at the wall outlet near the microwave. Too many devices plugged into an old circuit, cheap adapter, poor insulation. Preventable. I stared at the page in my lap and remembered the conversation. "Caleb, that outlet's not built for all that," I had said. He rolled his eyes. "Dad, we're not in the 1950s. He was right. We weren't. Back then, people listened when you spoke from experience. Now they wait for something to burn. I walked into the living room and handed him the paper. Didn't say a word. He read it slowly, didn't look up. His fingers trembled near the bottom of the page. Then he folded it once, then again, until it was small enough to disappear in his palm. But it didn't. Later that night he knocked on my door. Not the timid knock of guilt, not the aggressive knock of pride, just 2 quiet taps. When I opened it, he held out a plastic sandwich bag. Inside, the brass padlock, broken, bent, blackened around the edges. "I found it near the attic stairs," he said. "Didn't know what to do with it." I took the bag, held it in my hand for a moment, then set it down on the table beside me. "Now you know how much damage one bad decision can cause," I said. He nodded. "I want to fix this." I raised my eyebrows. "With me?" "With all of us," he said. I looked him in the eyes. He didn't flinch. "Then you're going to learn how to fix things right," I said. "Not fast, not halfway, and not with excuses." He nodded again. "You'll help replace the wiring, patch the kitchen wall, paint it the way your mother liked. You'll come with me to the bank next week, and you'll sit beside me, not across." More nodding. No words. I let out a long breath. "Or," I said, "you can keep that sandwich bag, and we'll pretend none of this ever happened." His shoulders dropped. "I'll see you at breakfast," he whispered. And he walked away. Not a boy pretending to be a man, but a man who finally understood what it cost to lock someone out of their own home. I went back up to the attic today. The window opened easily this time. The latch had been fixed. The glass was clean. So clean the light poured in like it had something to say. I stood there for a while, let the dust settle around me without judgment. There's no padlock on the door now, just a soft, close latch. The room smells different, less like cedar and insulation, more like paint and second chances. I'd painted it myself. Off-white. The color Margaret used to call clean rain. Caleb helped. Said he wanted to. I didn't stop him. We replaced the old smoke detector, installed a new one in the hallway, too. Sophie helped pick it out, said she liked the one with the blue light. The boxes are gone. The trunk is now filled with blankets for the grandkids. The corner where I used to sit is now a reading nook, with one of Margaret's old quilts, and a floor lamp from the garage. I didn't plan any of that. It just happened. But I kept one thing exactly where it was. The broken padlock sits on the shelf above the window, not to remind me of the pain, but to remember the line. Because every family has a moment when someone crosses a boundary. What matters is whether you rebuild the wall or leave the gate open. That morning, at breakfast, Caleb passed me the butter before I asked. Sophie asked me to tell the story about the raccoon in the chimney. I did. Even laughed. The kind of laugh that comes from deeper than your chest. Dana said nothing. but she cleared my plate when I stood. That was enough. Before I left the table, I touched the chain around my neck. The key was still there. I thought about taking it off, but I didn't. Not out of fear, out of principle. Because keys don't just open doors. They remind us we have the right to. As I stood in the attic one last time, wind whispering through the open window, I smiled. Not because everything was fixed, but because, for the first time in a long time, I knew the door would open if I asked it to, and that was enough.